Welcome again. And we want to talk about something today that is really practical and very, very helpful.
Are you saying we aren't practical?
Well, this is especially there. And Bill has been working on an ebook cookbook for a project, and he's done a beautiful job. And one of the concepts that he's used in this book, in fact, the basis of it, is so important and helpful. Do you want to share?
Yeah, basically, I had a friend who shared a peanut butter cookie recipe with me, whole food plant-based. And I used to love peanut butter cookies. And so I made it and I went, well, that's okay. But, it had all the usual kind of processed things in it and that. And so I thought, one of them being peanut butter, right? And I thought, that's processed. Is it possible to make a whole food version of this, which would mean leaving out the peanut butter? I thought, well, let me see if I can. So I just did it with peanuts. And, it was a pretty decent cookie.
It was really good.
Yeah, it was good. It didn't make it in the cookbook, by the way. It wasn't that good. But it got me thinking, how can I swing our recipes even more to whole foods? Because we've done the SOS free, the salt, oil, and sugar free, pretty well for some time now. But that whole food part, especially in baked goods, getting rid of things like peanut butter, any of the nut butters, or the plant-based milks, or the sweeteners, the agave syrup, maple syrup,
honey.
Yeah, I mean, of course, sugar, anything that's processed. So anyway, that was the basis for this little cookbook, and I had so much fun. So it's not available. I have put it together, but it's being offered through a bundle with Chef AJ and won't be out until March.
Yeah, we'll tell you about it more toward March.
Yeah. But we wanted to share with you today how the different ingredients that we use to swing our favorite recipes, the stuff that we grew up with loving, and things that we've discovered since, but still have a fair amount of processed foods or some oils or things in it. These different ingredients we want to start eliminating because we notice the more whole food ingredients we use in these recipes, the better we feel after we eat it. I'll tell you, we have a chocolate pudding, a sweet potato chocolate pudding on our website that's to die for.
It's true.
And so there you have it. I mean, you are eating sweet potatoes with cacao powder. Now, that is whole food plant-based.
And it tastes so amazing, so much better than what we may have a memory of as a kid with processed food.
So anyway, we're doing these switches. And of course, if you change the ingredients, you're never going to get exactly the same product. Just can't do it. But we have developed recipes that certainly satisfy everything that the original satisfied.
I think they're better. They taste better. They make you feel great.
That's a big part.
They really taste better.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. So what are these ingredients? Basically, whole food plant-based, SOS free. Now the SOS is the starting point, and of course the most difficult. We're talking about sugar, oil, and salt. And if I think about everything my mother used to bake, chocolate chip cookies, chocolate cake, German chocolate cake, oh, that was great. Just about any thing she baked, the main ingredients were flour, sugar, butter, and a little salt.
And eggs.
Yeah, and eggs. Yeah. But the SOS, SOS was the main big part of the ingredients. So how can you do these things without these old, familiar, conventional ingredients? And you can't.
Simple. Tell them how.
Okay. So starting with the sweeteners, over time, we got rid of the sugar. So then we went to maple syrup, agave syrup, brown rice syrup, things like that, molasses, barley malt. But those are also processed. So what I'm doing almost exclusively now is dates, raisins, or sweet fruit. So it's all in the whole food form and works really, really well. I think.
Really well.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's kind of the main thing with the sweeteners. And what you can do, rather than buying date paste is kind of a processed date. You can make your own date paste quite easily. So it's just a matter of adding like a cup of dates and 3/4 of a cup of water in a high-speed blender, powerful blender, and whoop, in 60 seconds, you've got a really nice paste that's really smooth. So for some baked recipes, it's nice to use a date paste rather than the solid date. But in probably 80% of all my baked goods these days, I'm using straight dates. It really works good. Or raisins. Okay, so the next thing then is, of course, the butter, which for us went down to like avocado oil or coconut oil. Just a little explanation about the difference between fat and oil. They're basically the same thing in terms of the components that make them up. They are lipids, they are fatty acids. But a fat is solid at room temperature, and what we call an oil is liquid. But they basically are the same thing. You know, they're fatty acids, they're high calorie, and so they're kind of the same thing. So how do we deal with that let's start with the baked goods. What the fat and the oil do for the baked goods is they improve the texture. They keep it from being so crumbly. They keep it moist. You know, the more oil you add to a baked goods recipe, the more moist it is. And they also add a richness of flavor. And another thing they do, which is interesting, is that the fat in the oil helps to pull the flavors out of the herbs and spices that we use so that we actually experience them more. So that's kind of their role in recipes. So what I do mostly is use nuts and seeds for that fat. So they have fat in them, but they come with, in the whole food form, they come with all the fiber, they come with all the nutrients that when you're using an oil or a fat like butter or like even what we've considered a healthy oil, avocado oil, there's no fiber. And a lot of those essential nutrients that are in the whole food, in the avocado or in the olive or whatever they've pressed the oil out of, a lot of those nutrients, they're not there anymore. You know, they're still living in the meat of the whole food that is not in that bottle. So you're getting a lot more nutrient density when you use the whole food. And for us, it seems to be working fine.
And you don't get the fat, which puts weight on, which leads to chronic conditions. You get some fat in the nuts and seeds and avocado, but far less if you're careful in how much you use of them.
So that's the thing. You can get the benefit of the richness. You can get the benefit of it staying more moist. The other thing that I use for the moisture piece in replacing oil is apples and bananas. Those two whole foods tend to give that baked product the moisture that an oil does. So if you want it more moist, add a little more apple, add a little more banana. Those things carry through to give the moisture. So the other thing is the texture. The oil helps to hold it together a bit, not be so crumbly. And so that's also part of what eggs do in baked goods. And what we do to replace the eggs or the texture piece of the oil is to make either a flax egg or a chia egg. So we use either flax seeds or chia seeds, and you grind them up. We grind them up in a little coffee grinder. And it's very simple. It's just 1 tablespoon of flax or chia to 3 tablespoons of water. And you let that sit for 5 or 10 minutes. And believe me, if you haven't ever made one, it's fascinating. You kind of whip that watery goo, and I mean, it's like whipping eggs. It's really neat. So that's a good replacement substitution for the eggs to give it that holding power. Now, that's the kind of baked side of it. Now, oil and fats are used a lot in savory dishes too. So what do you do, hon, if you want to replace the oil and the fat, particularly like in creamed goods, like a creamy squash soup or something?
Well, I just whir up some cashews with water, or another nut that you enjoy, or seed with water, and that gives it the creamy flavor
Yeah,
and texture.
yeah. And it's so easy to make these milks, these creams at home, which again are so, in my opinion, superior to what you buy on the shelf, off the shelf at the health food store. The milks that you buy off the shelf, they've been filtered. So a lot of the husks and all of that are not there, which gives you a nice liquidy milk. But again, that processing, you're losing the fiber and you're losing a lot of the nutrients. That if we're putting this milk into a soup or into a
Casserole.
casserole or a cake, having that extra fiber is just adding more nutrient and more body to it. So it's not like, what's the advantage of taking all those nutrients and the fiber out in the recipes we're using?
Yeah, and when you buy that plant milk at the health food store or the grocery store, it's full of preservatives often too.
Yeah, so they'll add sugar, they'll add additives,
Yeah.
different things that, yeah, I'm happy not to have in my body. To give it more shelf life isn't to give this body more life.
Right.
Typically,
it's the opposite.
Those additives aren't what we're looking for. So yeah, we're able to replace the fats and the oils with the fat and the oil that comes naturally in nuts and seeds. The final thing is salt, and that's probably the trickiest in terms of the taste, really being able to match the taste of a recipe that has salt in it. So when we first went salt-free, pretty much everything tasted a bit flat. But what we found is there are a lot of salt-free seasonings out there that help to bring that flavor up. And the other thing that we do that really helps a lot is to add some heat. So we'll add like chili flakes, or what are some of the other things that you do?
Extra spicy.
Yeah.
Or chipotle chili powder. Yep. Works well.
Yeah.
And the other thing you can do is make the taste sweet. It either needs to be more spicy or sweet to compensate for that salt taste. And I love from Costco the no salt seasoning that's organic. That works really well. And all it is lots of veggies whirred up.
Yeah. And we've mentioned this before, but what's interesting when you really go salt-free, that part of the S in SOS-free, your taste buds start to change.
So much.
And it's true, the recipes taste different, but all of a sudden we were tasting these flavors that we've never tasted in the same dish before.
True.
So it's wonderful the capacity our bodies have to regulate and adapt to the diet that we have.
Well, salt actually, you'll realize as you let it go, it dampens the flavor. it doesn't really add to the flavor that's in the food once your taste buds adjust. We're tasting tastes that are heaven, and I had no idea they were there, masking them with salt.
Yeah. And so the issue is sodium, of course, in terms of health. So we get plenty of sodium in the whole food plant-based diet that we eat. So we're not having a problem with sodium intake. And the other thing is that not having that extra salt gives us the opportunity to really be a lot healthier. You know, the little things that can come from a little bit of extra salt. You know, what's the point? What always fascinated me is how there was always a pinch of salt in so many sweet baked things. Chocolate chip cookies, pinch of salt. And I tried to figure out why it was there. And everything I ever read was that it enhances the flavor. And as I tried to monitor, I tried to be sensitive to how is this salt enhancing the flavor, I never really got it. So this was interesting. When we stopped adding salt, how it was we tasted more flavor. The interesting thing about salt and everything is from a commercial standpoint, you eat more of it. It is an appetite enhancer, booster.
Yeah, salt.
It makes you want more.
Right.
And so when we drop the salt, it actually lowers that desire to keep eating the same thing too. So it actually helps with portion control.
That's true. One thing about dropping salt that is good to be aware of, you want to get your iodine that iodized salt contains, not sea salt. And you can do that so easily by sprinkling some dulse flakes on your salads or on a cooked dish, or using a little bit of kombu in your smoothies. Yeah, you just need a little bit of, or chomping on a
nori?
Yeah, nori sheet.
Yeah.
A little bit of sea vegetable to give you the iodine, and you'll be fine.
That's what we usually do. Yeah. Okay, so that's the SOS replacement, the substitutes. Now, the other thing, like I said, you know, every recipe my mom made had a lot of flour in it. That was the body of the cookie or the cake or whatever she was making. So there are whole food substitutes for that. What I use is sweet potatoes and black beans and chickpeas. So there's some great recipes. We've got a black bean brownie on our website. Check that out.
Oh, that's so good.
You don't miss the flour.
No.
But I don't find those work for everything. And so the one exception that I make in my SOS-free cookbook is that I will use rolled oats. So rolled oats are slightly processed. They don't fit the whole food category completely, but they're a lot better than flour. Flour is way down the spectrum from what a rolled oat is. So rolled oats, they're processed, but not nearly as much as flour. So that's the one kind of caveat to what we found to replace all these things with in our recipes. I still use rolled oats in some of my baked goods and different things.
Yeah, and you can look further afield and look at rolled rye, rolled quinoa. There are several grains that they give offerings of in a rolled form.
Yeah. So, any more?
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
That's pretty much what we do.
Yeah. Now the recipe is a wonderful recipe. It's taking a butternut squash and turning it into fries for your air fryer or your oven. And they are delicious. And we also added to it a creamy fry sauce that you can dip them in if you wish, but you don't really need it. They're so good. They stand alone.
It really is interesting. So I remember when I first discovered yam fries at a restaurant, you know, it's like I was in heaven. And so this squash fry is in that same direction, but very unique from a yam fry.
True.
You know, that flavor is there, but that texture of having that nice crispy outside and really tender inside, and the sweet quality of, or sweet taste of the squash is wonderful.
Yeah, it's really good. So give it a try and see what you think.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.